Professor Nataraju. Thank you, Dr. Chakravarti, for organizing this event. I see Dr. Sindhu Padial in the audience, whom I had met at another conference last year, I think we met, and Professor Lakshmi Kanpadi is also in the audience, whom I've been in touch through different webinars. Today's topic is very interesting that Professor suggested, so I thought I'll bring in all the importance of dharma as a philosophical concept. We are all, that's why I was asking what are the backgrounds of all of you, and all of you are very much aware of the importance of the word dharma as a category, as a word. So it's more of a reminder for all of us that how widespread the idea of dharma is across Indian civilization. Sometimes probably it does happen that Indian philosophy gets equated with Vedanta, right? What is Indian philosophy? That is Vedanta, especially after Swami Vivekananda. Vedanta, and that too Shankara's Vedanta, has become synonymous with Indian philosophy. But of course, I'm sure you'll all agree Indian philosophy is much diverse and there are so many streams. And there are some terms such as dharma or yoga or Atman, Paramatman. Those are widespread, not just in Vedanta, but in many, many streams of Indian philosophy, both Astic and Nastic, right? So in this presentation, I thought I'll do a, overview of the importance of dharma as a category across the text, across languages, across texts, across traditions, and what it can do, like Professor Nataraju was suggesting, the epistemic importance of dharma. What can dharma bring into our discussion that religion cannot bring? Right? Religion, if we apply a Western category, a Western term, English term, what kind of intellectual violence it might do to our interpretation, to our hermeneutics, that only dharma can justify. Only dharma as a category can justify interpretation of Indian civilization or Indian cultural traditions, not religion. That is an overview. So I've kept the presentation itself not very long, it's like few slides, but then with our discussion and conversation, maybe we'll explore further. So let me share my screen now. And all right, so that's the title, India and Indology through Dharma and Dharmic Categories. All right, so when we look at the Dharma definition itself, we find 17 meanings, at least, right? There might be more, but 17 meanings in all Indian languages, not just Sanskrit. I did an informal survey. I was in North Carolina at that time. And in my society, I could find people speaking Tamil and Telugu, Kannada, and even Odia, Bengali. And I asked everybody line by line. Of course, North Indian languages all have this word dharma, but I was not sure about Tamil especially. But I was pleasantly surprised to note that dharma as a word exists with all these layered meanings in all the Indian languages, almost all, at least the languages that I counted there in, and over the years that I've been observing. It is not just a Sanskrit category or Sanskrit word, but because of the most likely interactions between different Indian languages, Tamil and Sanskrit included, and many other Indian languages included, even modern contemporary languages and ancient classical languages of India. All of those languages have this word dharma, and these are the most common interpretations, most common meanings that we have. Of course, dharma, I was just having dinner before this talk, and I was asking my mother, what is the meaning of dharma? And she said, I don't know how it has become so popular that first thing she said was religion. I started laughing. Yeah, maybe 20% is religion, but dharma is much beyond that. But that shows the hegemony of English, that even my mom, who is now 74, and even she's equating dharma with religion, which is not we wouldn't prefer that, but that's how the hegemony of English is. But in addition to religion, so many other meanings, right? We have customary observances. Of course, again, we are using English here, but that's the way to translate, that's the way to communicate. So I'm just listing down all the meanings of dharma. So customary observances, law usage, law. Dharma is a law. Dharma is a practice. Dharma is a religious or moral merit. I think here it refers to punya, right? Dharma is a punya. Virtue, that is niti, righteousness. Again, I think high value, morality, sense of morality, duty, kartavya, justice, nyaya and insaf, that is again modern meaning, but that sense of justice is also embedded in dharma. Piety, those who are very spiritual or religious or following their moral code, religious code would be all under piety. Morality, sacrifice. The sacrifice word is also very highly problematic in English, but I think here it's referring to yajna or yagya, which is also equated with dharma. Right? So those are the basic 17 meanings. There must be many more. But that shows us the widespread, multi-layered interpretations that dharma can give us in different contexts, different languages, different circumstances. We can apply all of these meanings in sometimes synonymously, sometimes interchangeably, and I'll mention more about how we can. What happens if we apply these different meanings of dharma in one context, in one setting? What if we apply dharma interchangeably? It becomes a kaleidoscopic phenomenon where one meaning can lead to another meaning and vice versa. I'll explain how. All right. Now a little bit of a debate that I was alluding to, something similar that we see at a conference such as Vedant Congress. Here is another debate. What happened was in 1991, Wilhelm Helmholtz came up with one of the most cited books on Indology called Europe and India. That was in 1991. And then Paul Hacker, in some ways both are connected. I think one was the guru of other, teacher of other. And both of them, Paul Hacker and Helmholtz, came up, both of them were critiquing dharma as a category, dharma as a word. And both went back to Bankim Chandra Chattopadhyay's Dharma Tattva and the other modern Hindu writers such as Aurobindo Ghosh and Tagore and Gandhi and Vinoba Bhave. And both of us started claiming in their writings in 1991, as I said, Europe and India and Paul Hacker's articles. Both are saying that dharma as a modern category has evolved only as an influence of Europe on Indic thought. So what they're claiming is that Ghosh, Aurobindo Ghosh and Tagore and Gandhi and Bhave and modern thinkers, and even Vivekananda, they have started developing dharma as a universal category only after influence from European thought. Before that, dharma was really tied up with varnashram dharma, that is varna-based duties or ashram-based duties. That's it. It was not a universal concept in their opinion. To that, I countered in my first book, Dharma and Ecology of Hindu Communities. I'll show a cover of that book in a minute. In my book, I countered their argument by saying that Guru Jambheshwar, who was not a Sanskrit scholar, who was a Bishnoi guru in the desert of Rajasthan, and he lived from 1451 to 1536, he uses this word dharma to teach about ethics. वृक्षों को नहीं काटना है क्योंकि ये धर्म है. We don't cut green trees in desert. Bishnoi community will not cut a single twig of a single tree in Rajasthan's desert because that would be against dharma. Or it is to protect animals, to protect birds, to protect green trees, flora and fauna of desert is dharma. So that's a very universalistic concept. It is not about varna or ashram only. Yes, it may be tied up with varna and ashram, but when Guru Jambheshwar uses the word dharma, he was really teaching about universalistic principles, ecological principles, without using the word ecology or climate change or biodiversity. Those words did not exist at that time, but he could easily connect the universal teaching, universal value, universal philosophies by using the word dharma. Do not waste water, or practice hygiene, or do not cut green trees, as I said. Do not burn any wood that might have insects. So be very non-violent, be very compassionate. Those are all universal values. They're not just about varna or ashram. So that was a direct contradiction to the claim made by Hacker and Helmholtz that dharma is a very recent universal category. So that's a little debate glimpse I shared with you. Now, if we go forward, if we dig down further this word dharma, we know, many of you I'm sure already know, dharma comes from the Sanskrit root dhri, which means sustain, support, and hold. At least those three meanings are also from the root of the word dharma, that is dhri. Now, when does first time dharma word appears in Sanskrit texts? In my research, I would like to welcome your thoughts if you find even ancient occurrence of the word dharma. But the first occurrence that I am aware of is in the Rig Veda, in the Purush Sukta, Prithivim Dharmana Dhritam. And then Tani Dharmani Prathmani Asan. That's definitely from Purush Sukta in Rig Veda. Tani Dharmani Prathmani Asan. So in that, the word dharma is actually replacing the word ritam. Before Purush Sukta in the Rig Veda, the word that occurs is ritam. And ritam simply means cosmic ecological rhythm. I personally like to translate ritam as rhythm, cosmic ecological rhythm. Who knows, rhythm word in English might be derived from the word rhythm. That's why I like to connect both rhythm and rhythm. But after Purush Sukta, we see rhythm, the sense of rhythm is now replaced with dharma. So even in the Rig Veda, the idea of dharma is not just about varna or ashram, but it is a cosmological principle. It's the principle that sustains, the principle that supports, holds the entire cosmos. Right? The entire cosmos is created, as you know, Purush Sukta says that when a Purusha is sacrificed, right, his one eye becomes sun, one eye becomes moon, and the four varnas are created, and his head becomes the space, and his breathing becomes the air, and on and on. So the entire cosmos is formed by the sacrifice of this one giant cosmic person, that is Purusha. So again, the dharma idea of dharma here is again cosmic, ecological, it's universal principle, even in the Rig Veda, not just by Guru Jambeshwar. So from ancient times, the Rigvedic times, to Guru Jambeshwar's time, to Tagore, Gandhi, Vinoba Bhave, Ghosh, and so on, Vivekananda, and so on, dharma has been a universal idea, not just tied to Varna or Ashram. That is the response to Hacker and Helpers. All right. So next, where do we find next occurrence of major occurrence of dharma? That is in Purvamimamsa Sutra by Gemini, in which I'm sure many of you are already aware of Chodana, Lakshana, Artho, Dharma, and in which Vedic instructions that is the means to understand and practice dharma, that is the direct cause of the good, Shreyaskar, desirable, is all signified by dharma. Dharma signifies virtues and righteousness. That's in the Mimamsa Sutra, Purvamimamsa. All right. Now let's go beyond Sanskrit. Let's dive into a little bit of Pali and Prakrit, Buddhism and Jainism. And Jainism, as we all already are aware of, Ahimsa, Paramo Dharma, although the line itself comes from the Mahabharata, but Jains have embraced that line so much that it has become synonymous with Jainism. But other line that is also in Jainism, in Jain text, in Prakrit language, is Kevali Panattam Dhammam Saranam Pavajami. The Dhammam here word means the dharma that is taught by the Kevali Panattam. The Kevalis are the jinas, the liberated beings of Jainism. The dharma that they promoted, promoted by the Kevalis, the jinas, that dharma I take sharanam, I take refuge into Pavajami. I accept the refuge into that dharma that is promoted, that is preached by Kevalis, by the jinas. So that's another definition of dharma. So why Kevalis? Because as you know, Jains and Jinas like Mahavir, they rejected the Vedas, they rejected Sanskrit language, right? But what they experienced, for them the experience was uppermost, was supreme. So in their experience, what they taught, what they preached became the codified teachings of the Jinas, and that became the Jain philosophy, Jain religion, and so on, Jainism over the last 3 millennia. So that's another definition of dharma coming from Jainism. Then Sahu Dhamma. Sahu is just another word for sadhu, that is also in Sanskrit. And Sahu Dhamma is again very similar to Kevalis are the supreme beings that are liberated beings, but then Sahus are the ones who preach based on Kevalis experiences, and what they preach to common people becomes Sahu Dhamma. That is also one of the pillars of the Jain tradition. Then we look at Buddha's Dhamma, and as we know, teachings, rules, and laws for the Buddhist community are all compiled or codified into Dhammam. So, and as people accepted Buddha as their teacher, they said Buddham Saranam Gacchami, right? Sangham Saranam Gacchami, and Dhammam Saranam Gacchami. I shouldn't have this diacritic here, it should be Saranam. So in Pali or Ardhamagadi, it wouldn't be Sharanam, I think, right? It would be Saranam. So Dhammam Saranam gacchami. That would be in Buddhism. So in that, dhammam has taken the meaning of all the teachings of the Buddha, rules of the monastic lives, monastics in the Buddhist sanghas, and all the laws that Buddha gave to even for common people, non lay people. Those are all part of Dhamma. So Dhamma takes a slightly different interpretation in Buddhist terminology and in Jain tradition. Now, more familiar, more commonly accepted definitions of dharma, which we also find in the Indian constitution and law books, where yato dharmaha tato jayaha. This is from the constitution, I believe. Wherever dharma is, there the victory is ensured. And that's also the last line of the Bhagavad Gita, as you know. That's also dharma. Then we have another very interesting observation by a Dutch scholar, Van Buitenen, in 1957, who was the pioneer of translating the Mahabharata, which is the project is still going on. Multiple volumes of the Mahabharata are being translated based on the critical edition. There, I believe, still work in progress, and it's not has been completed in English, the translation. So what he noticed was artha, kama, and dharma should not be deemed to refer to distinctly different practices. In principle, all three are dharma. So as long as one is pursuing artha and kama under the dharmic notions, then they are valid. But if they are transcending the dharmic notions, then that would become adharmic and not to be pursued. So in essence, dharma covers the entire life. Right? Artha and kama are also part of dharma. That was his observation, and that makes sense also to us. Then the Mahabharata's famous line, dharana dharma iti ahur dharmena vidhrat prajaha yat syad dharana sanyuktam sa dharma iti nishchaya. Dharma is that which sustains the affairs of this world and the affairs of the other world, this world and the other world. That is all the sustaining force that there is in the entire cosmos, and that is dharma. So also in the Mahabharata. Then of course in the Bhagavad Gita, yada yada dharmasya glanir bhavati bharata abhyuthanam adharmasya, and rest of it, you know. So the different interpretations of dharma as supporting principle, sustaining force, ecological force, cosmic force, ethical principle, and on and on. Buddha's teachings, and on. We see all these kinds of definitions. Then Bhagavad Gita also says one's own imperfect swadharma is better than pardharma, even if that's perfect, but that is to be shunned. What is to be practiced, what is to be embraced is one's own dharma rather than adopting somebody else's dharma. So that is also, we can discuss further based on the questions. I'm assuming that we're all familiar with these ideas, so I'm going forward. Then let's take a look at Karnad's Vaisheshika also, where yato bhut abhyudaya nishreshasya siddhi sa dharma, that which leads to attainment of well-being and the highest good is dharma. That is from the Vaisheshika. And then let's come to Ramayana now. And in Ramayana, the whole conduct that is exemplified by Rama is dharma. What Rama does is dharma. Truth, righteousness, strenuous effort, compassion for creatures, and kindly words, reverence for Brahmins, gods, and guests, all displayed, demonstrated by Rama, that become dharma in Ramayana. And now I come to the epistemic ideas of dharma. What happens if, let's say, dharma is a realm that is in the intersection of religion, dharma is a religion, dharma is a physical property, and dharma is a human duty. So what I suggest based on the observations by Dharma as a Body, Mind, Environmental Gestalt by Ariel Glucklich in 1994, and by Parajuli, and this was by Waitman and Lamb. And what they found is that when Indians are using the word dharma in different Indian languages, let's look at the right side figure first. So in the right side figure, what I show is that, let me show you the once again. Yeah, so this was Waitman and Pandey, and they used to teach Indian languages, I believe Hindi, and they did a survey. What they found is that dharma is used by Indians in different contexts. So sometimes they will say dharma is religion. Sometimes they say dharma is physical property, as in sun has its own dharma, air has its own dharma, so physical property, right? And so on. Fire has its own dharma. Similarly, dharma is also duty. What is manushya dharma? What is human duty towards animals? So that is also part of dharma. Then, of course, dharma is that what we practice in a temple, for example, at a mandir. So dharma is also connects with religion, right? Then Parajuli did something similar argument he made in 2001. What he found is the dharma is an intersection. Dharma is the intersection of supernatural realm, human realm, and natural realm. So I found these two observations very similar and very striking. On one level, we see linguistic usage of dharma, and on the other hand, dharma also is one category that connects in three different worlds of supernatural world, that is spiritual world, human world that connects with human duties, and natural world which connects with physical properties. So if we combine both, we can agree with Ariel Glucklich, who made in 1994, who made this argument that dharma is a body-mind-environment gestalt. So what happens is when, let's say, a Hindu is taking a holy dip, and tomorrow is Makar Sankranti, for example, not too far from where you are. Most of you are in Bengal and Assam, and tomorrow many millions of Hindus or thousands of Hindus will be taking that holy dip in Ganga Sagar, right? Makar Sankranti. So when Hindus are doing that, they are trying to, as Ariel Glucklich would say, they are trying to transcend the three realms of religion, duty, and physical characteristic, body, mind, environment gestalt. And they are trying to connect with the transcendental phenomenon that can make some spiritual, that can remind them of some spiritual enlightenment kind of experience. Some, like a glimpse of that spiritual experience that one experiences only when they transcend these body-mind complex, even their environmental complex. So that is the argument that Ariel Glucklich made. In essence, then dharma is that at the intersection of all the three worlds, that is once again supernatural, that is spiritual world, human world, that is ethical duties and so on, and physical world, that connects with nature, that is fire and earth and trees and so on. So that is so yes, Indians do use this word dharma in different contexts and even interchangeably. But when we apply these three different realms together, then what does it have to do with epistemic context, in an epistemic context? So now let me show you another example where Professor Anne Gold, an anthropologist now retired from Syracuse University in New York, and what she found in a small village called Ghatiyal in Rajasthan, in Ajmer district. She did this long-term research, I think at least 20 years she researched in that one small village in Rajasthan. What she found was that during her research in 20 years, she saw that trees were being destroyed, trees were being cut down in that village. But when she asked the villagers why these trees are being removed, why these trees are being destroyed, this is the reply that she got from Rajasthani villagers. Of course, her translation here: human behaviors are irrevocably interwoven with the natural environment's condition. The deterioration of one implies and involves the other. So as humans are becoming more and more greedy, more and more selfish, as moral values are going down, the replica we see, the reflection of our immoral behavior is what we see in the destruction of the environment around us. So human behaviors is in that way, it is interconnected with the environment. So that is how, when we lose our dharma, when humans lose our dharma, when humans are losing their dharma of the earth is also affected. So that is how I made this connection between ethical ideas of dharma and natural idea of dharma in the physical realm. And let's see, if the second in the second box down below, by Marriott and Linden, Mackie Marriott and Donald Linden, the two retired scholars from the University of Chicago, Arjun Appadurai and Frederick Smith. All of these four scholars noted that in the Indian context, the difference between mind and body, culture and nature is more of a degree rather than of kind. So it's a continuous spectrum. Nature and culture are not two separate realms. They're all interconnected. And dharma is one idea that can interflow from human realm to spiritual realm to physical realm. That is what I was trying to show in the previous slide. So because mind and body are also like in a continuum, they are not separate. Body and mind are not separate. They're one continuum. Nature and culture are also not separate. They're one continuum. It's a one cosmic entire cosmos is one concept that connects with, that can be explained, that can be interpreted by dharma rather than religion. Because if we apply the category of religion, that would connect only with spiritual realm. Religion is dealing only with, mostly with spiritual ideas, spiritual rituals at a temple, at a place of worship. But when we apply dharma as a category to interpret Indian context, Indian civilization, Indian cultural traditions, we see this continuum rather than fixed categories of body versus mind or culture versus nature. That is how dharma is important to as a category. Dharma is very widespread. Dharma is in all languages. Dharma is in all different contexts, and it connects with ecological principles as well, because dharma word itself comes from the idea, the word of dhri, which means to sustain. Sustain connects with sustainability. So dharma also has this cosmological, ecological realm also, interpretation also. So that is why it can serve better in this continuum rather than two different complexes of body versus mind or nature versus culture. That is the main idea that I wanted to share. And that was the idea that I explored in my first book, Dharma and Ecology of Hindu Communities, in which I went to villages of Rajasthan where Bishnois are living and those who told me their stories. And that is what I showed you in the beginning of slide, the Guru Jambeshwar's statement. So that is all I had. Okay, this is the last slide. So dharma of nature can inspire dharma of humans. And if humans are following their dharma in line with the dharmic notions, then that will take care of eco-dharma. So ecological resources will be better protected if humans are practicing their dharma properly. And that inspiration can come in turn from nature when we try to learn from the dharma of tree, vriksha dharma, or dharma of fire, agni dharma, dharma of sun, the sauri dharma, and so on. That is the way I thought I'll summarize my thoughts and take your questions, and we can have more discussion.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you for that lucid presentation. It was self-explanatory, and you have drawn attention back to the epistemic cultures and the difficulty in the usage of different concepts. And first thing that comes to my my mind is, apart from dharma and religion equation, where else do you see the major difficulties in cross-cultural contexts in such usages? Where else do you see?
You mean the different categories, similar categories?
Yeah. Where else?
Oh, many, right? There's a long list. History versus itihas, scripture versus grantha, or God versus Ishvara. So many, it's a big list, right? Because again, because of the hegemony of English, we end up using these words, religion and scripture, and even God-man. There's a word called God-man. I mean, doesn't really apply for Vedanta. Every man is a God-man, right? So what is this God-man, and so on. So there's a big list. And Indian context, we don't really have an idea of scripture. It is a free flow idea of many. Even contemporary spiritual leaders can have their own interpretations. Right? So they can create their own new interpretation, and so there is no, strictly speaking, the idea of fixed canon as such doesn't really exist, and it can be expanded even further. For example, Hanuman Chalisa, for many people, especially living in different parts of India and now across the world, for them Hanuman Chalisa can be as holy as Valmiki Ramayana. So where do we draw the line of scripture, and how do we include even later texts? So many such ideas, I think.
We also try and take care that when in my interactions with Professor R. Balasubramaniam, also those days in Chennai, he used to say that we should be using Sanskrit words in our classrooms.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't translate them most of the time. You would say that don't translate.
Right. Even idea, words such as murti, and murti becomes idol, which is the most problematic word, right? Idol means false god, and everywhere I'm sure most of you would agree. Everywhere we end up translating murti into idol, and my students do this also at where I teach here in Pune.
True.
And every time I have to remind them, idol means false god in Judaism, Christianity, Islam. Idol means false god to be destroyed, right? So do not use idol word for murti. Please just stick with murti. Don't use the word idol. And on and on. So many.
That brings home, I mean, a valid point to all these scholars sitting over here. Professor Padhi, you're there, and Dr. Arup is here. Anybody, your thoughts? Lakshmikant Padhi ji?
Yes, I'll be speaking after 5 minutes. I have a beautiful point to say. Just
Okay.
give me 5 minutes.
Wait for that point.
Yeah.
Professor Nataraju, I am Santosh Kumar Pal from Bardwan.
Oh, good
Can you
evening,
hear me?
Professor. Good to have you. Good evening, Professor.
Actually, this is a very interesting discussion, and Professor Pankaj Jain has made very significant point. We also are aware of the differences between the word religion, its connotation, and also the multifarious connotation of dharma. It is okay, it's no problem. But sometimes the problem is with the ordinary people. They fail to understand in which context the word is being used and what is its connotation. And then they fail to understand the differences between religion and dharma. So we as academicians, how can this type of mismanagement, misunderstanding, and sometimes this also taken as excuse to interpret something which is not really dharma, but they teach it in the sense of dharma. And now in the cultural and political sphere also, this term is used indiscriminately, and that is the problem I am facing. Yes, so I'd like to hear something from Pankaj Babu to speak on this matter. Sir, please.
Yes, it's an ongoing struggle, I think, for all of us. We can't divorce our languages from English anymore, and we are just, inundated with English terms, all over the place. And even the, switch on any news channel or open any newspaper, it is now just flooded with English words. Even in Hindi newspaper, we find English words.
Yes.
Hindi, I'm not sure of what is happening to Bengali or Assamese, but Hindi is
Yes, the same type of thing is happening all over the world, all over India.
We have to be, so we as professors, researchers, scholars, we have to take the stand and make sure at least our students know the difference, that don't use them interchangeably, don't use religion for dharma. Because if you use religion, right, it is like 80% of the wider significances of the dharma word is completely lost.
Yes, we can understand that, but it is very difficult to make them understand. That is the problem.
That is what, so we have to keep repeating and keep reminding them that, don't do that. We have to keep explaining, right? We need a lot of patience.
Yes. I'd like to have a copy of your book. How can I have it?
It's all available everywhere, Amazon.in, everywhere it is available.
Okay. Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you, Professor. Thank you, Professor, for joining and your time. Dr. Arup, welcome. Dr. Arup, please go ahead.
Yeah, good evening, Professor Nataraju, and thank you, Professor Jain, for your illuminating lecture. This is actually a kind of an observation. This is not a question. I'm just thinking, after your lecture, that whenever we are actually talking about dharma in the philosophical term, then as we have already mentioned that we talk dharma in different senses, in different religions or in different cultures. The term dharma is used in different contexts, but the implication of dharma, that means the implication side, or the way we implement it, dharma, then that is what I feel a kind of an universal moral principle which binds them together. That means the meaning is one thing. That means the meaning of dharma is one thing, and its implication is another thing. That is, my opinion about it. What is your opinion? Do you agree with it, or do you differ?
That is what I was trying to show, the implications of the word dharma. It is much wider and much more universal. then the word religion. That is the whole attempt I was trying to make. That if we limit to religion, then we are, really doing an injustice to the entire category of dharma and injustice to entire Indian civilization, because dharma is that category that can be really compared with a category such as Tao or Tao in China, right? Or Logos and in Greece and so on. So why follow something that is really coming from Abrahamic traditions or Abrahamic categories such as religion, which is based in a prophet and a scripture, right? And, God that created the entire world and so on. So it's a very different kind of theology that gave us this idea of religion, whereas dharma doesn't really have a beginning or end or not founded by one person or so on. So it's a quite different worldview completely. So that is what dharma is bringing us. And not just religiously, but even ecologically. Ecologically is what is the most important, at least from my perspective, because when non-Sanskrit literate scholars or those who don't even know Sanskrit language, even when they are using the word dharma, they are using it as an ethical idea, as a universalistic idea, as an ecological idea. So how can we not take note of that? It's not just of course, dharma is a philosophical word and it comes from Rig Veda and so on, but it comes from Guru Jambeshwar also, who was not trained in Sanskrit, right? So dharma has this wider. That is what I was saying.
So I want to be clear about the distinction between meaning and implication. How Professor Aurobjyoti was saying that there is a distinction between meaning and implication. And is this at all tenable? What is your opinion?
Yes, because dharma has these so many meanings. That is why it has more implications, much wider implications, especially ecological.
Multiplicity. We can say multiplicity of meanings. Multiplicity
that is exactly
of
what I was saying. Yeah, because it has many meanings. It is very it is very interchangeably used by people in different contexts. In ecological context, implication. In spiritual context, another implication. Ethical context, third major implication. That was I was showing in that Venn diagram. Three major implications. In ecology, in spirituality, and ethics, all three are
this wider use has different many good things also, but there is also problem how to narrow down the meaning in a particular context, and that is the problem. That is another problem. In a particular context, it is very difficult to exactly say.
It's going to be very context-sensitive situation, context-sensitive interpretation.
Contextual, yes.
Right.
Contextual.
So it will be contextualized by the people who are using it. So when Guru Jambeshwar says that do not cut green trees, that is one context. That is also dharma. Or when he says, imagine the desert of 15th century Rajasthan, and he says, take shower every day. That is dharma. Can you imagine that? So 15th century, no hygiene idea has yet come from Western Europe or modernity or science. And he's still telling his followers, take shower every day, because that is dharma in Rajasthani language. So that is one implication, right? It's a health implication, right? Practice hygiene without, of course, using the word hygiene, right? So the context defines the word dharma. In personal hygiene also dharma can be used, and it is used. In ecology also dharma is used. So do not eat meat, for example, or do not kill animals. That is also dharma. So all these things are coming from 15th century Rajasthani Guru, Jambeshwar Guru, founder of Bishnoi. So that is the different implication that I was showing you in my examples.
No, actually, why I'm just thinking that the context may be different. That means the meaning may be different, but the implication is the same, because the dharma is that which binds them together. That means it binds all the human beings together. And in that sense, it has one connotation. That means to bring each and every human being in the same plane. That say, suppose when you think in terms of Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, that he talks about the kingdom of ends. That means all human beings are end in itself. So dharma, in the Indian context, even though it is used in different contexts, but ultimately the result is the same. But in that case, we may not look for the result or the consequence. I mean, that is my point. Thank you.
That's fine. Yes, that's fine. Yeah, I think Dr. Padial has written something.
Yeah.
Dr. Sindhu, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah.
Padiji, we'll come to you in a minute. Well, Dr. Sindhu, you are there?
Okay. No.
Yes, I am very well here.
Please, why don't you put across your thoughts?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you so much, Professor Nataraju and Professor Jain, for bringing out the question of dharma once again. I was wondering that this notion of dharma, as you have mentioned, that in the Vedas and the classical texts, it was more of a law, and that law is a kind of universal transcendental law. But then the very definitions which we have seen, almost 17 definitions, which, or the connotation of the word dharma, which was there in your slide, that gives me a kind of idea that maybe we are a little confused with regard to this very concept, and that's the reason why every culture, every tradition, and even in every language, we have a different connotation of the term. And at the same time, and if it is a law, when did that deviation took place? That there is a law, it is a law, it is a concept, and from there to human action, because now when we talk of dharma, it is more of a human action. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, it is more of an action-oriented affair rather than having a conceptual understanding of it, which I think Krishna tries to give a conceptual understanding of dharma to Arjuna. And then the second question, which is a very stupid question, which I'm asking, which I myself think that it's a stupid question, that what would be the status of this action-oriented dharma in a very post-humanist world, which we are entering into? And that post-humanism is really important because this transcending the humanness, if we transcend this humanness, then what will be the fate of this dharma, which we are emphasizing too much, whether it is ethical or religious or even a spiritual understanding of it? Thank you. These two questions, I just...
By post-humanist, what do you mean? Are you referring to the AI revolution and robotics and all that?
Exactly. AI revolution, and also that human transcending the barriers of just humanness. That could also be a post-humanist world.
Right.
Like a spiritually elevated soul, say, for example.
Right. Yeah, we'll have to evolve a new dharma for robots, right? If we want to, stay alive on this planet, I hope robots will follow some dharma, and otherwise, doom is near, right? Without dharma,
exactly. But then who will decide the dharma for them?
We all have to decide. Not dharma was never decided by one person, right? It has to be universally it has to keep evolving based on collective consciousness, in some ways, right? And code of ethics that hopefully will develop with the United Nations and all the major governments of the world. Maybe G20 will develop some code of ethics for the AI world. We have to wait and watch. But we definitely will need some ethical code of ethics. Otherwise, yeah, it'll be completely chaotic.
Actually, the term post-humanism is very difficult to understand. It is a very, very problematic term, post-humanism. Because if you speak of technology, etc., and it also is related to humanity. So post-humanism is a term I fail to understand. How can it be?
Transhumanism.
How can it be?
Yeah. She wrote transhumanism. Probably that's a better term.
Transhumanism in the term that we are going beyond speciesism in the context of nature, in the context of environment. We are going beyond our speciesist morality or anthropocentric morality. Right. That is something in that context we can speak of post-humanism. But it is better to understand that we are going beyond speciesism, post-speciesism. It may be better to understand the ecological methods.
Lakshmikanji.
Yeah. Thank you. Wonderful, Professor Jain.
You are traveling. You are traveling, Professor. You are traveling.
Yeah, I am traveling. I just stopped somewhere, and I just want to share some of my video. I was wonderful. I mean, wonderful presentation by Professor Pankaj Jain, and also the questions raised by Professor Santosh Kumar Pal, and also raised by Arup, and to some extent by Sindhu Podial is interesting. See, but first of all, let me clarify one more point. Dharma and religion. I mean, you cannot, dharma cannot be translated into religion, and religion cannot be translated into dharma. This is number one. Second thing is, it is impossible to translate the word dharma into English. And as Professor Jain has already mentioned that there are 17 varieties, but there are many, many more varieties. The first, in Mahabharata, who coined the term dharma? It is Duryodhana himself. Janami dharma nachame prabriti. Najanami adharma nachame nibriti. What is dharma? I know. And what is adharma? I also know. And the second thing, when you, and it's Professor Pal and Professor Jain responded beautifully that dharma is context bound. True. And also, sometimes dharma is considered as achara dharma, sishtachara or sadhachara. There is a beautiful reference in Mahabharata. Agamanam hi sarvesam achara srestha uchyate. Achara prabhavo dharma dharmat ayu vivardhate. It's a beautiful statement given in Mahabharata. Again in the Mahabharata, in Anusasana Parva, Vyasa says to Sri Krishna that Urdha Bahu Viramyesa Nacha Kaschit Srunoti me. Dharmat arthascha kamascha sa kimartham no sabhyate. I mean, I'm just by raising my hand, I'm lamenting, but what is dharma? Nobody is listening to me. Vyasa is asking to Sri Krishna. Nobody is listening to me that can you define me what is dharma? Then Sri Krishna says, Dharmat arthascha kamascha sa kimartham no sabhyate. Dharma is satisfaction of desire and acquisition of properties with the guiding principles of dharma. That is called, if somebody is applying dharma, then his ayu, dharmat ayu vibardhate, his ayu life will be longer. I mean, these are the beautiful examples where contextual implication of dharma is very much required. So, and one more thing, the theoretical understanding of dharma and the practical aspect of dharma, there is a hell and heaven difference. I mean, people knows the shastras, but when they applying dharma, they forget the shastras. And that is the tragic point which I'm just going to add to Professor Jain's point and Professor Pal's response, also to Arup Jyoti's response. Thank you, Arup and Professor Pal, for asking beautiful question to Professor Jain, and also Professor Jain for beautifully responding this question. Thank you.
Thank you. We all try our best. Good. Thank you. All right. So we all, as I expected, experts on dharma, all of us, but some little bit to simplify, added to your knowledge. I hope I.
Interesting. But wonderful. I was thinking, Professor Jain, to prolong this, I mean, to say something more about this lecture, but within 40 minutes, he has completed, definitely. But I was thinking something more from you, sir.
Okay, maybe some other time. Yes.
Maybe some other time, definitely.
Yes.
He has a lot of works. He has written several books on that, dharma and ecology, dharma and the, yeah.
We all try, keep trying.
Yeah. Anybody else or one scholar student, I believe, is dharma and religion. Oh my God, he wants to take you back to the old days. Are they interrelated? My goodness. In what way they are interrelated? He wants, what is the 20% similarity? If there is a...
Whatever dharma is done inside a place of worship, that can all be called as religion, I think, right? When rituals are happening and puja archana is happening, that is also dharma. So that is religion. In a way, it's the practice of rituals is all I would be okay with, connecting with religion. But then dharma doesn't end there. It's just maybe, one glimpse of dharma inside a place of worship. But then dharma is also, like Professor Podial reminded us, dharma has to evolve even for the world of robots and in the space, at the moon, at the Mars, wherever we go, entire cosmos is dharma. Dharma cannot be devoid from any particle in the universe. In Buddhism, entire cosmos is Buddha. Every particle is dharma dhatu. If you bring in Chinese Buddhism of China and Fayan Buddhism and so on, they will say that entire cosmos is filled with infinite mirrors reflecting infinite images of the Buddha. So every particle is Buddha nature, Buddha dharma. That dharma is also then Buddha nature. So every particle, every
Swabhava dharma. Swabhava.
Swabhava is dharma.
Swabhava.
So in Buddhism, Buddha is our Swabhava. We are all Buddhas inherently, right? So, and on and on. So then in Jainism, then it goes to ahimsa. So every particle, every Atma can have the dharma of achieving or becoming Paramatma. That would be Jain dharma. There is no Brahman or there is no creator God. So dharma is then much, much more beyond religion, is what I was trying to talk about.
Dr. Moon, are we closing here?
Sir, actually, I have a question, though partially answered. Still, let me share the question actually, at least. So, do you consider that dharma is eternal or it is evolving with time? You have already mentioned that it is contextual or something like that, but still we have also a concept of Sanatana Dharma, like we have understanding. Even Sri Aurobindo, Swami Vivekananda, Gandhi several times said that Hinduism is a Sanatana Dharma, not a religion, mere religion. So what they mean by that Sanatana Dharma, eternal Dharma? Is it just a Varna Ashrama Dharma or Shadharma, or what it is? That's
I think we have the two interesting categories, right? Shruti and Smriti. The Shruti, that dharma, Shruti, that the way dharma is defined in Shruti is eternal. That is not really changing. That is perennial or eternal, right? And then we have Smritis. Smritis are more context sensitive and they can keep evolving over time. For every era or every period, there can be new Shrutis and new Smritis. There it becomes more context sensitive and that can be, applied with new interpretation and so on. Some people say maybe that, some parts of Indian constitution at least can also be taken as our modern day Smriti in a way, if not the entire constitution. So Shruti and Smriti. Shruti is eternal, perennial, permanent, non-changing, and different interpretations for different time periods is what is Smriti, and that is context sensitive. So that is the way probably we can distinguish between these two. Context, right? Perennial and context sensitive. Shruti and Smriti.
So, Dr. Moon?
Yes, sir.
I'm formally thanking everybody.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
From different universities, if Dr. Arup joined from Tripura University, then Sindhu and Arup, and then we had Usha Vijayalakshmi is still there, Bombay University. Dr. Usha, you're there? Yeah, Usha will speak next month. Dr. Usha.
Hi, yeah, I'm there.
Okay, great. Good to see you, Usha. She's from Bombay University. And then, she'll speak on the architecture, the Chola dynasty. That's the buzzword these days, the contribution of the Cholas to temple architecture in India. We would love to hear. So,
on it.
Yeah, we'll plan it sometime in the near future.
Yes,
great to see
thank you.
And,
I'm really enjoying, but I'm not I don't want to ask questions, but that will show my ignorance. I'm just listening to the conversation.
That's good. Good, yeah.
We need more Chola awareness across India, especially, the North Indians know so little about Cholas. Oh my God.
Yeah, right.
such an important chapter in Indian history. Yes. Thank you, ma'am.
So thank you, everybody. Professor Padi, in spite of his traveling schedules, Santosh Dada, Santosh Palji, such always good to have him on the, and then we have several research scholars and our students have joined. Thanks, everybody. And thank you, the speaker, particularly. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you all. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Very interesting to be